Welcome everyone to another episode of season 4 Runners Roundtable. This season is all about the ladies. I mean, every season is always about the ladies on this podcast, but this one in particular is about women who inspire us through running and what they're doing within the running industry. And I am beyond delighted to have Sarah Marie with us today. And I just kind of want to show you some stuff real quick, because I feel like I might be going through the vault here. So if you're listening, I'll try to explain what I'm showing, but I just want to show you. So I've got this, run all the miles, do all the yoga. And I feel like, I was like, oh, I'm kind of going through maybe the vault of her design.
Yeah, that's a throwback.
That one's a throwback. And then this one's another one.
Yeah, the champagne one.
Run all the miles, drink all the champagne. And then this one was actually gifted to me earlier this year because I ran the London Marathon. So I just wanted to bring that stuff out, and I'm going to actually email you, and I'll probably post the picture too, but I have a picture of me wearing the champagne shirt because I was trying to figure out, you've been around for 7 years now, right?
No, it's hard to believe.
So I'm like, wait, I know I've been following her just as long. So that champagne shirt is definitely from 2018, or at least that's the picture that I have of myself wearing it. So before we kind of go into what I just showed you, I just wanted to show you because I'm like, I think if I have 3 items that qualifies as a collection of your products and of your designs. But how about you introduce yourself to us and tell us how you got into running, and just what does running mean to you?
Okay, so my running. So I started running middle school. It was, the middle school track club, I think, was my first running adventure, where I did the track team there. And then that was 7th grade. And then 8th grade, I started cross country. So that was my origins with the sport. But yeah, and so that's where I started. I loved it. Clearly I started a company around running. But it was great. And it was one of those things where I loved the running, but I also loved the community of it all and the teammates. And so it was, high school really that got me into the love of it. And then as I went through my life, college, I would run, but to stay in shape. And I did a couple local races and stuff like that. And then I really got into it again when I lived in Manhattan. And that got me into running. I remember going out and watching the New York City Marathon, which, if you live in New York and you see the crowds and the energy around New York City, it's hard not to kind of fall in love with it as a runner. So, that's really what started me again, down running longer distances. And, living in Manhattan, it's hard to do stuff outside where, I came from, I grew up on a farm and I was outside all the time. So I moved to Manhattan and, between the energy of the running community there and wanting to be outside, there's only so much, you can go sit and read in Central Park. So running was really an outlet for me too, to be active and out. And and so that rolled into what I've got going now. And so it's kind of a brief history of it all.
At what point did you decide, let me start this company?
I don't know if I ever really decided that. I must have, but it was one of those things where I feel like a lot of companies start out of, someone wanting something that they don't see out in the market. And that's kind of where this started. I was doing, so I started doing stuff, for myself. I started doing drawings, actually, is where I think the origin started. I was working, at a marketing company, and a lot of things kind of all happened at once. I was working at a marketing company and I just felt, as a creator or someone who needs to, even if it's just for yourself, be making things. And so I started drawing again, and I was so into my running at that point in my life that I was just started drawing things around running. I made an alphabet with letters that were all running themed. And so I started doing that. I started doing drawings around races, and just because I needed a creative outlet. And and I made some shirts just that, you know, were fun. And I was gifting them to friends who were running marathons. And like, I didn't have the right gifts that were out there that I wanted to give them. So I started making stuff. And so it started from that. And then people would be like, oh, where'd you get that? And so it slowly turned into something where I was enjoying doing it. People were like asking me about where I was getting the stuff. So it kind of started organically like that. And then once I had it going, it was like, this is great. I guess we're going to do this instead of all the other little things I had going on.
So what was that initial setup like? Was it you at home with like a Cricut and like iron on? What were the original ones?
I don't think Cricuts existed when I started. Like, there's so many, like, I get emails now are like, oh, is this, you know, a vinyl Cricut? I was like, no, we don't. I mean, I have a Cricut now, but I use it for like ideas and like, you know, practicing sizes and colors and styles, but I don't print with a Cricut. But you know, like it also happened at the same time. There's a couple of like, it all kind of happened like the perfect storm where I got pregnant with my first child. And I went from, you know, like running, I'd get up and I'd go for a bike ride in Central Park. And then after work, I would, you know, go for my run. And like I had so many hours that I was training for things. And when I was pregnant, they were like, you should not be running. And like, they wanted me to limit my activity. So I went from like running for hours a day. And I was like, well, now I have like this 2-3 hour window. What am I going to do with it? So I started doing more. So that was part of it. And I also, you know, at the time I was an ambassador for Under Armour. And so I had a good community with that were all runners too. So like I had like the perfect storm of everything going on. But yeah, so a lot of this stuff, like I filled my time that I used to be running, like doing drawings and like connecting with other people. And so it all kind of, you know, worked out together.
I love how I'm just trying to think of the majority of people are pregnant and not thinking, let me fill time with a whole new business. Like, let me just give birth to a whole new business, a whole new effort. And you did it. And I think that's, first of all, amazing, because there's this, you know, our society just has this narrative of when you're pregnant and when you have kids, you really can't pursue your dreams because you need to focus on your children. And or just the guilt, man.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of the guilt. The guilt is so exhausting. How did you navigate that? Was that something that even came up for you in terms of, all right, here I have a new child and then I have this new business?
Well, it's hard too, because I mean, it's always like, you know, the ebb and flow of stuff too. I find where I always try and think like, especially with the different seasons that come with like an e-commerce business, like I'm working on stuff for the holidays now. And I know I'm working late, like we're ordering dinner a lot more. Like I try to think about it as like, I'm going to put in this time now. And then after Christmas, I'm going to try and take a week off. And like, that'll be, so it's hard. And I go through it too, where it's like, I'm not here for a lot of the things that I want to be here for, but you know, like I will try and make up it, you know, when I do have the time. So it was hard. I mean, when I started it though, I wouldn't have started this if I honestly didn't get pregnant. Like, I think that catapulted me into where I'm at now. And I honestly, there was one point when I was going to work I had a call, and I remember I had a call with like the office that I was working at. And my son was on, like, it wasn't high. It was like a little, like our couch, which is low, but I remember he rolled off. And I was like, that was the first time anything happened where I was like, oh my God, I'm such a bad mom. I can never go back to work. And that was the first time I was like, oh, mom guilt. And I was like, I took my eye off to do this other thing. And so I think it's always going to be there, you know, but, I find a way to incorporate them too. Like I went to an expo this summer and I brought my kids with me, and like my oldest son's handing out like thank you cards and putting stuff in. So I try to like get them into stuff. I'll use them, you know, I went and I ran Disney last year. It was my 40th, and you know, like, it was 40th birthday. Let's go do something, you know, to celebrate. And I did it around a race and around my kids. And, you know, like, it's lucky that I get to try, like, I get to fold them into what I'm doing. And I think that's an important part of like making it work is, you know, they're there with me, everything. And like, they help me do stuff at home, and they're cutting apart things for me, and they're putting stickers. And so I also think it's important for them to see how much work I put into it and the rewards that come out of it.
Oh, absolutely. That was this summer. My our family was split over the summer, where I went to the west coast of Florida with our daughters and my husband stayed east coast of Florida. And I remember thinking, how am I going to survive this? I went to, I have my therapist and multiple therapy sessions, and the therapist reminded me that that setup was actually going to be really ideal, because then the kids would get to see the work that I do. It's
Yeah.
not like they're in school. I mean, even right now, right? Like, we're having this discussion while the kids are in school. So this is part of the work that my children don't see. This is part of the stuff that I love to do that they don't see. And that, you know, thank you to my therapist, because that really helped shift a lot of my mindset about being one-on-one with them in the summer, because here they did get to see what I did. They did get to see how I allocated my time, or how I pursued those things that excited me, or that I was passionate about. So it's such a gift that your kids are getting to be involved with that. And
And I
also,
think it's
go
important,
ahead.
like, to have your children know that work can be fun. Like, I know, like, I work really, really hard, but I enjoy it. And I want them to grow up and see their mom's business grow and be like, yeah, but like, she loves running and she built something around it, but it's a lot of work. And I work, like, I'll put them to bed and I'm working. They wake up and I'm working. And I want them to know that it can also be fun, and it can be really hard work, but it goes together and it can be rewarding if you put in that time. Again, like, I also feel like it mirrors running a lot, where it's like, you know, like, it's really hard sometimes and you hate it and you hurt, but then you know where you're going with it and you see the goal, and then like that hard work is for something. So I think it's important for them to be around it.
Yeah, and to see that it's not all instant gratification, right?
Yeah.
It's not
Yes.
like you're doing it today and you're getting it tomorrow. There's actually a whole process behind it, which I want to ask you a question first, and then I want to find out a little bit more about your process. So when you started off, it was Sarah Marie Design Studio, right? That's what I was like, let me confirm that my shirt goes that far back, and that's the logo.
Yeah, we did. I rebranded it a little bit this year. Yeah.
Yeah, what was because now I feel it's Sarah Marie Running Co. What prompted that change?
So when I named it, I was not like, this was like way back. The name came from just needing a name, and I wasn't doing specifically running stuff at that point.
Okay.
So I was doing, you know, like, I was doing freelance marketing stuff. I was putting together wedding invites for friends. I did all of the things as I was trying to figure it out. So I wanted a name that kind of encompassed whatever, just a generic. Yeah. So that's where the name came from. I also had different ideas for names, but like, it's so hard to find a name that you like that's not already taken, or, you know, like, so I was like, I'm just going to do my name in design studio, because it was generic enough. And the names I had on my list were all taken. So that's where it started. And then now that it's like very specific to running, I was like, all right, we'll do it, make it a little bit more specific too.
Are you doing any of that other stuff that you did before, like the wedding invites? No, you're like,
No, no,
no.
barely have time to do what I want now, let alone extra projects.
Right. So do you remember what your first design was?
Oh God, it would have been drawings. You know, I did like race drawings, and, you know, Erica Sarah,
Yeah.
she reached out to me, and I had like, I give her credit. She kind of helped catapult this whole thing started. She reached out and wanted to do one of the drawings on one of her pieces, or a necklace. And so I want to say that had to have been one of the first, because she had reached out and like instigated it to begin. So I think that's got to be the beginning.
What would you say is your favorite design now?
Oh God, that's out or that's coming.
I mean, I'm going to leave it up to you to tell us. I
Well,
don't
I got a new one on now. So it says Early Morning Run Club. I'm wearing it because it's my current favorite. It'll hit the website probably by the time this podcast airs. But I don't know, like, and it's weird because sometimes I'll do stuff where I was like, this is it. I love this. I'd wear this all the time, and I'll launch it and it doesn't sell well. And then there's some things that I'm like, okay, this is fun. Like I came home from a run with an idea and I put it on a shirt and I put it on the website and that flies out of, like, I'm like, what? And so it's amazing the way it goes, but it's hard to pick a favorite, and it depends. It's like picking, your favorite kid. I don't know.
Yeah, I was telling my husband the other day, I'm like, I don't want to say that I have a favorite kid, but there's definitely one that's easier than
Yes.
the other. There's definitely one that's easier. So what is the design process for you?
So a lot of times, it's kind of haphazard where it's like I usually design in waves where it's like I will constantly have a list of ideas. So I'm always, if you look at like my iPhone notes section, I scroll and I scroll, like it goes on forever where I'll see something or I'll be out and I think of something and I just always will write down an idea. Sometimes I come back and I read them. I'm like, I don't even know what that is referring to. But so it usually starts with like a phrase or I jot down but yeah, so then from there, I usually will sit down and I try and do it in like batches because it's hard to like sit down and get a good chunk of time to design, especially with like life the way it is now. So I try and carve out time where I sit alone. I usually put on music and like go through my list of ideas and see which ones resonate and then take the text and work for a design from there. So that's usually how it works. And it depends a lot on like kind of where I'm at in my life and what my mood is. So that's where it starts. And then from there, like I'll do mock-ups. Again, this is where it's like I'll do a design and then I print it out on a Cricut and I test it out on different styles and different, colors I'll try. And then eventually the end product, once I have I'll print a bunch of samples. Usually now I'm working with a great photographer. I've had a few, I work with a few different people I'll send stuff out to and try and get pictures, try and tease stuff on like social media. And then I launch the collection. So that's kind of the rough way it works.
I read something on your website that I found really interesting, and it's the wrap process, WRAP.
Oh yeah, that's the apparel. So
Apparel.
a lot of this, the apparel is produced, in facilities that are like, what's the words I'm looking for? It is a certification so I don't produce the apparel currently. I have some of it, but a lot of it are blanks we print on. So I look for places that ethically source a lot of their stuff. So, whether it's recycled or it's, like the employees get living wages, stuff like that is important. So that's what we'll go through. And the places I will get material from, I like, it's important to me that it's from a, good company.
Yeah, that's why I saw that and I'm like, oh, she's doing, not to say that other brands don't do the homework, but you're adding in an extra layer of making sure that you are just from top to bottom. It's a good quality product because you're dealing with good quality people.
Yeah.
And was that a decision you made early on or?
Yeah. And then like too, like I try and use for most of the stuff, I try and use like eco-friendly inks and stuff like that. So again, it's hard to do it like as a small business to have all of these things, like worrying about, the orders and the customer service and the designs and the wholesale and like it's a hard thing to have all of these things checked off. So, but when I can, I do my best to make it, as responsible as possible.
So this is a question, and I'm curious because I feel like you're a creative person, which means your brain is probably working all the time with ideas. How do you prevent burnout?
I feel like it's with anything. It's like, again, with running, like to prevent burnout, take breaks, like don't, like between marathons, go on, like take rest days. I think it's the same. I say that saying like I actually take breaks and rest days, but in theory. But again, like it's really taking the time to like sit back. And also it's important to know, like, you can't perform your best unless you have those breaks. So again, like for like right now, I'm been working so hard to get stuff ready for the holidays. And I'm so looking forward to like taking a few days and spending it with my family. Like for me, that's what I'm looking forward to. And I know as I do these things to get ready, I have a goal. I mean, I've got my work goals that I'm going to try and hit, but then afterwards with my family, I will prepare to have those times where I don't have to be on emails all day. And then two, that is really important because a lot of your ideas come from, as far as a creative person, like going out, my runs, like if I don't have a new idea, I was like, I got to go for a run. My brain is just cluttered. And then when I come back, I'm like, okay, I see things clearer now. And so I think doing that and actually getting out into the world, like it's hard to come up with new ideas if you're just sitting in your same spot all the time. So I think it's important to take those breaks. And it may feel like a chore to take the time off where you're like, oh, this is going to fall behind. But in the long run, you have to know that that's going to put you ahead.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? It's, and with anything, with any business, with any work that you do, it's taking those moments to rest, because I feel like also when you're resting or you're walking away from whatever that thing that's stressing you out, you're able to get perspective that you couldn't get if you're just like grinding it out on that same thing. And I'm curious if you've always known the importance of like the rest or going for that running break, or no?
I also think it's one of those things that comes as you, as you get older, but also you have more responsibilities. Like it's hard to burn out when you have 3 little humans counting on you, like you don't have the luxury of like being like, oh, I'm burnt out, I'm going to sleep for a week. Like when in my 20s, maybe I could do that. I would like call out sick to work and whatever. But, as you have all of these things, and I also, there's a community that relies on you as you do things, and to know when you have to take that time is important.
Yeah, that's so funny because I always laugh when people are telling me, oh, go rest. And I'm like, no, I don't think you understand what that means. Or
when to schedule rest.
When people tell me, oh gosh, what is it that I get that something about the weekends? And I'm like, I don't think you understand. My kids are home on the weekends. Like there's nothing restful about my kids being home on the weekends. And granted, my children are older, they're 13 and 11, so they can do a lot on their own, but it's still like there is no break from parenthood, and it's just not the same. It's not the same. Can you give us a timeline? Because I think this is really important in terms of when you had your kids and how it lines up with your business.
Sure. So it's easy because I basically count everything in like, oh, my kids are this old, so this is when I did this. Yeah. So I started it, again, I was pregnant. So my oldest is 8. So the company's been around for almost 8 years. So that's when it all started. And then I've got 8, 6, and 4 right now. So it started 7 years ago. And then that's like my biggest milestone was when I had Daniel. And then with the pandemic, so Max is 4. So he was 1 when the pandemic started too. Like that's another big like chunk of time in like the history of just our lives.
Yeah. So. All right. This is going to be such a silly question, but I mean, how did you do it? Right? Like, how did you do it? Especially we're talking about the pandemic, and we won't go into the pandemic, but the pandemic was a time where I call it like a confetti moment, right? Where it's like, oh, let's take the pieces of our lives and just shred them, throw
Yes.
them up, and then
Yeah.
see where they land. So, how did you navigate your business with the children, with the pandemic? Because it's, again, like I always go back to, for me, the pandemic was challenging because my kids were home and I felt like I lost myself a little bit in that because I had to be a teacher on top of
Mhm.
their mother, on top of everything else. So, again, like silly question, but I mean, how did you?
It changed a lot for me. Um, well, the one thing that like kept me through the pandemic was I tie-dyed stuff, which I know sounds crazy, but like remember the tie-dye trend was
Yes.
nuts.
Yeah.
So I sat in the backyard for like 3 months and tie-dyed, I want to say thousands of shirts. And those like really, as far as sales goes, that was bananas for me. But it also shifted a lot of stuff for my business where before the pandemic, I had like someone else was printing stuff for me and warehousing and shipping. Like I was doing stuff, but they were also doing stuff for me. So the pandemic shifted everything in-house for me. So
Mm.
my whole house, minus like what you see right here behind me, was like shirts, to the point where like we didn't use 2/3 of my house because the garage was filled, the guest room was filled, the downstairs den was filled, that like it took over. And so we were printing in my laundry room. Like it went nuts because it was hard because you couldn't get apparel, like, and then the supply chain was so messed up. So I started storing everything here and then like printing it in house. And so it shifted a lot, which I also keep a lot of that model now. I've moved production in house. I thankfully have rented a space and I have my own office and warehouse now. Which again, like if the pandemic hit, who knows what, like I could have been outsourcing a lot of that. So everything now, which has been great too, because it's been great for my design process. I see things more, I touch things, I print stuff myself, like I have a lot more hands on as far as the manufacturing goes of it. But so it really, I was forced to shift to this new model that I'm working at now, which in the long run is going to be great. Like it's been so much fun. It's been so much more work, and I'm figuring out how to do it. Like we've gone over this hurdle and then there's always another hurdle. And so I'm excited about what's next, but like, it was chaos, but it was also like my kids were young enough, so I didn't have the pressure. I mean, we were teaching them, but it was like teaching them 1, 2, 3
Yeah.
ABC, like, so I'm lucky to say that like we were home and I didn't have a lot of the pressures of like going to sports and like birthday parties. And so I did get to focus on the work and doing a lot more from home. I also focused on work like all the time, which I'm still trying to get out of. Like it was hard to separate the two. So I'm still working on that part, but it shifted a lot for me. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my kids it was second grade and fourth grade is what they were
Oh,
finishing.
that's hard.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful. I still think I joke every year where I'm like, I need to throw myself a party at the end of the
Oh yeah,
school year for
definitely.
having survived their grades. And it's so interesting that for you, it created shifts that still exist today because it was, again, for me, it was so easy to get really overwhelmed. A lot of the things that I did, I no longer did. And I felt like I was just a mom. Like I was like, I'm
Yeah.
just a mom. That's all I do. And it was pretty challenging. So I love hearing that you had a different experience that created systems that you have in place now. And
I will say the one thing I stopped doing was like going to things. So I just my family goes in and cheers for the New York City Marathon. And we did that this year. And it was so much fun that I feel like that was the one thing that I started doing again that I really missed during those few years, where it's like I stopped doing races. I mean, I stopped doing a lot of the stuff because I had such little kids anyways, and it was hard to do.
yeah,
But like now they're a little bit bigger, and going to some of these events, I was like, that's the one thing I missed, and I cannot wait to start doing again.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something you do plan on doing again, right? Like
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
gonna I think I had read on your blog, like you did your first expo recently after a
Yes.
few years.
Yeah,
And
it's been a
how
long
was
time.
that?
And yeah, it was good. We did the Long Island Marathon, which is close. Like I'm based in Long Island, and it was fun. I hadn't done it in so long. I didn't know what to bring. It was like a whirlwind of stuff, you know? So, but it was fun. And, the reason I started this whole thing was because I was such a big runner, like the running community, like that's where it all started. And to have not done stuff in so long, like doing that again, I was like, oh my God, I missed this. And like talking to people, and you come up and
Mhm.
people give you hugs and they tell you stories and they give you feedback, and, they tell you ideas of what they want to see. I was like, it's so important. And also it's like, it's hard to have that connection when you're like emailing or you're sending DMs. And so, it's hard. It's easy to forget on both sides that like when I'm packing stuff up, it's going to a person. And when you're reaching out to me, like you're talking to me. So it was
So,
so good to do again.
yeah, so that was going to be something that I wanted to ask just for clarification because I
Mm-hmm.
think I know the answer, but I feel like it's important for everyone to know when they're sending an email, it's to you, right?
Yes.
It's not like it's going to an assistant and it's not, which honestly I find to be even more impressive given your life, right? Like given the fact that you have three kids, that you're doing so much in-house, that you went through this period of your house literally being your warehouse, and yet it's still you. And that for me, this is just a compliment for you that I'm going to say. I just absolutely love businesses where, and this is again, okay, let me just say the words. Let me just say the words. This is part of why I love businesses like yours because it is you and it's a reflection of you. I mean, even if you go to Instagram or you go to the website, like you're the one that's modeling the clothes. Like
I
this
know.
is you. And again, for me as a consumer, those are the brands that I'm going to support. Like those are the
Yeah,
ones that I'm
thank you.
like, yeah, go to them, go talk to them because you are I find, and again, like I had to like look for all of these because I'm like, wait, I want to show her these because to me, it's and the same thing. Like I have, an Erica Sarah necklace that was gifted to me. These pieces are all a piece of you, right?
Yeah.
Like this is. I know you have children, and I don't want to take away from the fact that you have kids, but it's like talk about a legacy that you're leaving.
Well, and that's part, hopefully, too, like with this, where it's like, for me, it's really important that this succeeds because I've spent so much time and it is time away from my kids. A lot of like, it's hard to, whenever I think about this not working, I was like, but the reason I'm doing this is for so many different, like for part of them to see, for like, if I'm taking this time away from, like, I could be home doing homework and making dinners, and which I do a lot of, but not
Yeah,
all of it. And it's like, it's important that it works out because otherwise I'm like, what is it for?
yeah,
So
and
again, it's like the touching of the, like, as I grow, and I do need help with some of the things, but there are certain things that I think it's important that I maintain control of. And one of the things that I do is the emails. And sometimes I've missed some here and there, which, it's been a little bit overwhelming lately. And if I ever miss one, anyone who's listening, I'm sorry, but follow up. But like, I like to know what people are saying. I like to know the pain points. I like to know if you want something, different that you don't see on the website, or if you want to share, like people are ordering stuff for New York City Marathon. I was like, they're like telling me stories about who they're buying a gift for. I was like, send me the number. I'll put it, like, I'll track them in the app and I'll be out there cheering. Stuff like that is important to me. And it's hard, you know, as you've got all these other things going on, but that's one thing that I feel like is important, just as far as like, because again, it's a community. It's not just, I'm not trying to sell you just shirts. I want, like, the running community is a family, and it's important that like I stay part of it.
yeah, I mean, listen, the running community is great. And I'm curious, what does that feedback loop look like for you, right? When people are coming and they're telling you about your products and what's worked or what hasn't worked, or I have an idea, what does that look like for you? I guess how much of what people say,
Gets into it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I always have a running list. Again, like I have a notes list where it's like, these are my ideas. This is the feedback. So there's always I take what people say and I write it down. And so a lot of times if it's design ideas, sometimes that's harder just because I don't have, like, I've got a list of my own ideas that I'm trying, but like for a lot of the stuff where it's the races, people tell me the races they want to see and I work into them what I can. If they want to see, I get a lot of requests for custom items. So I recently started doing, which is hopefully coming to the shop soon, like I did a new collection, you can put 26.2 on the sleeve. And a lot of people have reached out and was like, I love that, but I want it on this sweatshirt. So I'm trying to work in, like, you can add a custom like sleeve to any of the sweatshirts. So, like I keep a running list and then there's different, like if you want a different color, I may not be able to do it then, but I will try and work it in later. Like I take the notes, I try and react as far as products go as soon as I can. And then a lot of times if there's, a link will be down or a code's not working, like I'm on it immediately. Like that stuff, if someone tells me there's a problem on my website, I sit down and I was like, guys, hold on. I got to get up from dinner and fix this code immediately. So like, I'm always trying to like fix things as fast as I can. And then I do take into account styles, designs, colors, always there's a list running. So if you have a suggestion, it goes into the suggestion box.
Yeah. And that's big too. Again, right? Like talking about the accessibility to you of I'm not sending an idea into the ether. Like it's actually going to make it across your eyes and into your brain, which again, big deal because sometimes brands will just make stuff. And I know I've seen stuff and I'm like, who is this actually catering to? Like who who wants to see that?
And again, too, like my style is not the same as your style is not the same as like, so like what I think like I love black. I love dark black. I love light black. And like, that's what I like to wear. And so I'll launch something and be like, black everything. And people are like, can you make it in neon pink? And I was like, I didn't think of that. Yeah, I can do that. Cause there's so many different variations of what people want and styles. And like, one person loves a racerback and one person loves the muscle tank. And, so it's those things where it's like, it's hard. I'll do stuff based on what I like because I'm the one designing it. But then if there's other people, like I'm always trying to get the feedback of what other people want, because again, like I want to create stuff that people want.
Yeah. So you're constantly designing, right? Constantly in this creative flow, but you're not always dropping new gear. What does that look like for you, right? We've got the holiday season, so there's stuff dropping then, but I'm sure it's not like every month you're like, here's something. How do you, what does a year look like for you?
So I'll be honest, there is no like actual schedule. I would love to, and I've tried to implement it before where it's like, I would love to have like a quarterly drop or, like every Friday new designs come out. Honestly, it's just too much where I'm at right now. So maybe in the future we'll have an actual, but like a lot of times it'll be like, I know that I've got 3 birthday parties this weekend and like a dinner something on Wednesday, like, so a lot of times it's based around my personal life where if I'm going to do a drop, I can't do a drop and then no, I'm not going to have time to ship them over the next 3 days. Like I've got a turkey trot I have to go to. I've got a Halloween part, like, so so that being said, the more that goes into stuff and the more I develop my process, the more I can actually get a schedule. It's just a lot. It's just a lot to do. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of like processes that go into it. So like if I'm going to do a drop, there's the designs, there's the colors. I got to do the SEO for the website. There's a lot of times I'll try and send stuff to the photographer. Like, so there's a lot of moving parts and sometimes I'll have a plan and it just falls apart. And so again, it's just like when I get to it. So like, honestly is how it works.
So for the women who are listening to this or, anyone who listens to this and they're starting their own business, because I'm listening to you and I love it. I mean, that's kind of how I operate. I'm like, if I have time for it, then we're going to do it. Great. I don't put any pressure on myself, but that feels so counter-cultural to say like, I'm doing this based on my personal schedule. what rewiring of the brain or reframe would you suggest to people who are like, no, we have to have a strict schedule? And I mean, I think of like the yoga studio that I teach at, right? They're ordering for the spring, 2 seasons ahead. And it's very
Yeah.
like it's that. How did you break out of that? Whether it's intentional or not, I love it because for me, hearing you speak, this is something that again, it is very much you, and you are navigating how to make it work with
Mhm.
your life versus work against it, or where you're prioritizing, no, this needs to happen today by this time. And so, sorry, kids, 3 birthday parties, Halloween party, like, no. What goes in mentally? I mean, do you ever feel guilt, or
Oh,
whether it's guilt towards the
I
business?
I feel like it's one of those things where I do stress out about a lot of it, where it's like, and it's all internal, where it's like, I have a new collection I want to get out and I want it to be out, let's say tonight by 5. And then I will like, and then I have to sit down and be like, but who's making it be out by 5? That's me doing it. Like, I'm causing this internal stress that I can just be like, have it out by Sunday. Like, I don't like, so, and for me though, too, like, I don't have the pressure of a business partner, a
Mm.
investor. Like, I don't have external pressures on me. So it's easy for me to be like, the only person who's making up the rules is me. You know what I mean? So like, I don't, I have the luxury of just being like, I can do this later. And so I think that has a big part to do with my attitude around it. Also, like, I don't want to hate my job. So,
Mm.
like, to have it still be something that I'm excited to do, I can't make these arbitrary deadlines that I can't stick to. And then I end up stressing out. And like, don't get me wrong, I have plenty of stress and I work late and, like, there's plenty of it, but it's not enough where I don't want to do it anymore. So again, too, like, it's this was started out of the joy of running and it was fun. And I think that's such an important part to remember, where it's like, I don't want to wake up one day and be like, this isn't fun anymore. So I think having the flexibility around that is what keeps it important to me.
And I think I wrote it down. The remember who's making the rules. And that's such a big thing because again, it's the mental reframe, right? Of this is your business and you are putting something out for people, but the people who are going to support you are going to support you regardless of when you put it out, right? Like whether it's today at 5 p.m. or Sunday or next week, those people are still going to support you. And I know for myself, if ever I get caught up in a deadline, and this is the same thing for me with running. Like if I start to overthink paces, I lose the joy. Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, the fun that I was having, it's no longer fun. It becomes a chore. And I think that's something that's so incredibly important to remember of like, why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
And,
100%.
and for
Well, that's
you,
like, I had this huge New York City collection that like it was these, sparkly New York, it says New York City on it. And, like, I had these ready to go. And I was like, I launched them like 3 days before I was like, I was able to get some of them to people beforehand, but I was like, I was working so hard to get these out and I just couldn't do it. Like, I launched them, like, I was supposed to launch them 3 months ago and I launched them the week before the race. And I was like, I can do my best. Like, and that's what I can do. And there's a point where it's like, that's your best, man. It's what you
yeah.
can do.
And that's the thing too, right? Because but I think it makes sense with what your product is, right? When we're talking about apparel, because this isn't, and yes, you can wear whatever the heck you want when you're running and on race day. But that's something that I appreciate about your clothes is that it's not really meant to be worn on race day. Like
It's
this
like
is
a celebration of your race. Yeah. It's like,
absolutely like all of it is a celebration of you showing up and you doing the thing. So
yeah.
whether you have it before or not, I mean, hi, like I ran London in April and I still wear this baby, right? Like on those days where I'm like, I need to feel extra badass.
Right.
I'm gonna take
Exactly.
my
And that's,
London
I love
shirt.
hearing you say that because that's 100% what it's about. It's like the ones where it's like, and even like some of the race stuff, you could put your time on it. It's not meant like, it's for afterwards. It's for celebrating. It's for going out and getting beers with your friends. And like, when you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, remember the time I did this?
Uh-huh.
So 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, so it's not, I just in general, I've come to realize this about myself, and I think it's also just getting older. It's I don't like to be rushed. And if
Yeah.
I'm rushed, honestly, I move even slower. And those moments when I'm rushed, I'm like, you know what, we're just gonna put it off even more because if I'm gonna rush something, it's not gonna have my heart in it, right? Like it's
Yeah.
gonna be like to your point, and that's why I wrote it down. I even put a little asterisk because I'm like, yes, remember who's making the rules because it is so important. And again, I go back to that idea of the people who are going to support you are going to support you regardless of when you launch it. They're just going to love the product. They're going to love your messaging. They're going to love what you're putting out there. And it's going to be something they love, whether it's the day after the race, a month after the race, years after the race,
Mhm.
whatever it is. To me, it's like, oh, here is my, this is my memory. And once I
Yeah.
get this, I'm like, okay, now I need to, make sure I'm adding the other shirts so that I can have a
Mhm.
complete set. So it's just, I ask that because I find that we're constantly, and I say we like the universal we're operating in a system that works for some people, but doesn't
Yeah.
work for people who are doing it on their own. And I find, and I guess here's a question for you. Is there anyone else in your family that has their own business?
Yes. Multiple people. So my husband has his own business. My parents have a business. Like it's yeah, it's common. Like this is, I feel like the people I've surrounded myself with my whole life have always kind of been, entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Okay. So that's
Yeah.
like that's always one of those things where I'm like, do you even have the script for what you're doing? Because it's like, even if your husband has his own business or your parents have their own business, like, are they in the business of running apparel? Are they in the business?
That's the thing. They're both construction. So
Yeah.
like it's, like it's not, but it's funny because like I'll go to my parents' house and whenever my mom will say something and I was like, Mom, like you can't critique anything I do. Like I learned it from watching you guys, we usually do Thanksgiving. We haven't done Thanksgiving at my parents' house last year, this year, just because like Black Friday is such a big holiday for, it's a lot. And so she had said something one year about like me getting up and I'm answering emails and stuff on Thanksgiving morning. And I was like, Mom, like I watched you guys my whole life work and do this. And so like you making a comment to me about doing this, I was like, I learned it from you. Like, so it was always funny because like, again, like I watched my parents like growing up. And so I feel like I owe them a lot of credit to how I turned out and like the work ethic I have, just because they were just such great role models for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much because I find that for me personally, I don't have role models within my family, but I have this podcast and I get to talk to people like you. And I'm like, okay, so there you go. There doesn't have to be a set path. I mean, even, kind of going back to what you said of the drops sometimes aligning better with your personal life than an
Mhm.
actual timeline. That's something that you figured out that works for you in your life. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. And
Yeah.
yet I feel like, I mean, I'll give myself as an example, and I'll keep it, you know, this will be more to like yoga, right? I teach
Mhm.
yoga. And I remember when I first came out of my teacher training, I was literally sitting down and calculating, how many customers or how many clients I needed to have and what I needed to charge them in order to be considered a full-time yoga teacher and all this stuff. And let me tell you, I've never met those numbers because it's a level of work that I'm just not interested in doing, one. And two, it just doesn't align with how I like to do work, right?
Yeah.
I want things to move organically. But in order for things to move organically, I've had to learn to trust myself, which is really freaking hard. So for yourself, how did you learn how to trust yourself? Because, yeah, you have these models and you have people around you that are doing it, but you are the creator and you are the face and you are the person who is responding to the emails. So, how did you learn how to trust, I guess, you and your process when it comes to the business?
You know, I don't know if there was like a way I figured it out other than just doing it. Like it's one of those things where, again, like you, there, once it started, like it was one of those things where like I put the time into it. And at this point, there is no other option for me. Like this is what I'm going to do. And so I think it's really important to have a network of people like to talk to. I believe in constantly learning things, which is one of the reasons I love doing this business is I don't come from an apparel background. I don't come from an e-commerce background. Like none of this stuff is something, if you asked me a decade ago, would I be doing this? There was no way I would have picked this as like my career path, but it happened. And the fun part of it, which I think is one of the reasons I love it so much, is it's a constant learning experience. And for me, if something doesn't work right, it's an opportunity to learn something else. Like, so for that, it's like, I don't get bored. And if something goes wrong, it's the next level. Like if something doesn't work out, it's a stepping stone to what will work out. And I think having that mindset, and I also credit like the fact that there are wonderful podcasts, like listening to people that you've had on, listening to podcasts. Like I go through phases where it's like, I will wormhole down e-commerce, nothing but e-commerce podcasts, that I'll switch to running. And so I think there is a world of knowledge out there too, that having that to resort back to is like, if I do something wrong, or I don't know how to reply to something, or I have a problem I can't figure out, there are these networks and these resources to lean on. And so even though I am doing this myself, I don't feel like I'm doing this myself. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I was going to say that has to be one of the best reminders for all of us is that we're not meant to do a lot of what we do by ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? We're not meant to just not like we need support, whether it's from, your husband helping with the kids, that's support. Whether it's you're calling someone up when you have a question, that's support. Voice notes. I love my voice notes. Listen, I send all my friends voice notes and like fellow coaches. And I'm like, with anyone, I'm like, okay, I have this idea, or can you help me work through this? And that just deepens the community, right? Like being able to go to someone and say, I need help, that unlocks vulnerability, which then creates deeper connection with the people in your community. But I also want to go back to something you said, because you have such a wonderful mindset in terms of, at least in what you said, you never once said the word failure. You just said if something doesn't work out, it's an opportunity to learn. Now, I think that's huge for, especially when we're doing something new, or we're doing something where, which is hilarious when you're like 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about clothing, right? Like, here you go. And yet this is where you are right now. How do we, and I'm going to say the word failure just for like simplicity's sake, but how do we not let quote unquote failure stop us from continuing on?
Yeah.
Where do we find that ability to see something not working out as an opportunity to learn instead of quote unquote sign that I should be doing it?
I mean, I think don't get me wrong, things don't work out. And there's always a period where I was like, oh man, like I find that it just doesn't serve you to, go down that wormhole. I feel like it is okay to look at something and be like, it didn't work out. It doesn't make me feel good, and accept that, like, I think it's part of the process. But I think in the long run, everything that's not worked out, let's say again, like the pandemic, it was such a problem for me at the beginning, but 3 years later, it is entirely shifted how I'm running my business. So like, it was really hard. And some of the things that you're going to do are going to be really hard, but like, you have to know. And again, I think it comes with experience. I think it's one of those things where, again, having people around you where it's like to motivate you when something is hard. Because sometimes there are days where you're like this, the beginning of the week, I had some stuff happen where I was like, oh, this, like the universe is telling me to stop. Like it feels really hard in the time, but like, again, you've got to know that there's going to be that time, and then you're going to take that, and then how are you going to shift that into something better? Like if something doesn't work out, it's a time to pivot and figure out something else. And I think it's something that comes with practice. And I know it's something that I have to tell myself when stuff doesn't work out, to like, okay, allow yourself this period. This is your period to figure it out. And then you put into practice a new plan.
Yeah. And I think it's what you're reminding us too, is that there's always a feedback loop to it, right? Like if something doesn't work out, that is an opportunity to figure out, okay, so what about this didn't work out? What, whether it be the time when you launched it, or the design, or, there's, especially in businesses where we're relying on other people to come through, right? Like you're relying on other people. It's also that realization that it's like, it's not you. It's actually not you. It's just, how is it being received or perceived by everyone else? And I also love the idea of like pivoting, right? Again, it's that you're telling us we have to be a little more mentally flexible with how we're doing things. And really that's hard, right? Because we think of it, and again, like a parallel to running, right? We think it's all uphill, and
exactly.
it's like, no, it's not.
It's so funny because I think a lot of the stuff that happens in life is just like, I feel like there's such a correlation with running, which, like, I feel like everything where it's like, if you have a bad run, that doesn't mean you're like, every run's going to be bad. If a race doesn't work out, it doesn't mean you're not good at running. It means you had like, I think there's so much that goes along where if, like you put in the work, you're going to have the results. And I think there's so much that like just goes hand in hand, where like being a runner has helped my mindset so much, just because how much work and the reward base is so similar.
Yeah. I have like 3 more questions for you. This one is just, my curiosity is always around how we get more people into running, particularly women, how we can encourage more women into running. And I'm curious where you see Sarah Marie, I was gonna say Sarah Design, Sarah Marie Running Co. Like, where do you see your business within that greater dialogue of inviting more women into the sport?
So this is a fun question. I have so many plans going forward. Like at this point now, like there's so many things I want to do, but like my youngest starts kindergarten next year, which will be like a big thing for me. So, like I have all of these ideas and things I want to do. And part of me is like holding back a little bit, just because my kids are so dependent on me still. So going forward, I love this idea because there's so much like, first, I have an ambassador program that I have wonderful women in, and I would love to focus more on that. Which like, it's open to everybody. And so it's one of those things that like having more people in that and actually focusing on that community is something I really want to do as I have a chance to, spend more time with that. I would love to like open it up and get more people involved in, helping with whether it's a design competition, like something like that, where it's like bringing, because like right now it's me and my work. I would love to have other ideas and people represented on the apparel. I think that would be such a fun way. And like to have, whether it's, I don't know, whether it's like submissions with phrases, submissions with, draw, like, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but having not only just like, I feel like there's so many wonderful communities out there that bring in a lot of people. I'd love to find a way to bring it into the apparel. Like, so there's just so many different ideas I'm like throwing around. It is definitely something I want to get more into as I have more time. Just it's so much work to do all of the things. Like now it's like I can pick and choose here and there, but like that, like the community base, especially around women, I love that idea. I also like, I do have some women who help me. They're all moms, like I try just even employment wise, having it be, because I'm like, as a mom, like we have one woman who helps me and she's been a friend forever and our families are so close. And she was helping me, it was years ago, and our kids were little and her kids were little, and I would hire a babysitter and all of her kids would come over, and like it was basically like a camp and we'd work. And like, so whether it's design, whether it's employment, whether, like there's all of these things that I'm looking at and I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but it's always something I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And I don't think I always ask questions like that because it's like the answer is never clear cut. And I think,
but it's exciting to think about, like all of these,
is.
I'm excited to think about all of the ways to bring more people in.
Oh yeah. As you were talking, I'm like, oh, getting people to come in with a design.
Right? Wouldn't that be fun?
So friggin' fun.
Yeah. And then do we vote on it? Like, how do it, like, that's something I want to hash that out for 2024, but that I think would be such a great way to do it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. As I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh, I would love to see something with like from, like Latina or just, like different phrasings that we say in Spanish, like even something like that would be a lot of fun. So it really does open it up to different communities, because I find that the more we can open ourselves up to different people, then they actually see that they're there, right? Like that
100%.
You matter. Like if I'm asking you for your opinion, that's me telling you that you matter.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I absolutely adore mothers, because again, I will share this all the time, every day. It's so easy to get lost in motherhood or to get suffocated by the mom guilt. Like it really is. And it does take being in community to be reminded that your goals and your desires outside of your children matter, right?
Yeah.
So to talk to you and have you say like, no, I don't cook that often, or, I cook, or we're getting a lot of takeout. All that stuff is so great to hear, because it's like, yeah, because right now in this season of life, your goals matter and your dreams matter. And that's going to have, honestly, what your children are going to remember? They're going to remember that my mom launched an awesome collection. They're not going to freaking remember what they had for dinner on Tuesday, right? Like they're not going to be thinking about that.
And I also, like, when I look at it, like I think about things, I don't think about like day to day. Like I try and think about it like this, I mean, quarter, but like I try and think about it like this season, like I may work a lot these 3-4 weeks coming up to Black Friday, but then after Black Friday and after the holidays, like we're going to do fun stuff and we'll make pies and I'll, like the things that, so like, I don't be like, this was a bad day, this was a good day. I was like, this whole season, this will be a little bit harder. This will be the celebration. And I feel like that too is like perspective on like the whole of it is important.
Yeah. Well, because today it's always like with my daughters, whenever they say they had a bad day, and I'm like, so can you tell me tell me about your day? And when they do, I'm like, so you didn't have a bad day. You just had a few bad moments within that day, but we can't label the entire day as bad when it was really like maybe 5 minutes this morning or something at lunchtime. And I try to tell myself that too, in terms of seasons. This is just a part of what's going on right now, but it's not the entirety of the story. This is just a small part of that story. It's so important to remember. Okay. If you had to give words of advice to you of 8 years ago, right? Here you are. Let's make you nice and pregnant. And I'm
Yeah.
assuming at some
Sitting on the couch drawing,
yeah.
eating pasta.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that, when we're talking about this idea of pivoting, I'm sure that was a period of time of your doctor telling you, hey, you need to chill. And
Yeah.
here you having to figure out what. So if the you of today could share some words to that woman of 8 years ago, what would they be?
I guess enjoy the journey. I feel like it's got to be it, just because there has been so much that's happened, so much unexpected stuff that's happened that I look back, like sometimes I'll go through old designs, like looking for stuff on Instagram, and I look back and I was like, oh my God. Like there's pictures of me and my daughter. Like I was doing a photo shoot in the kitchen, and she like comes in and I'm picking her up, and I was like, I can't believe this is where it started. And I think every point along the way, like looking back, it's easy to see where it started and where it's gone to. But like, there's like, when I started the first couple designs I took pictures in, I was marathon training with like a 6-month-old. We would go out and do 18-mile runs in a stroller. And like, I'd use that and I'd set up my phone and I'd take pictures. And I look back at those photos, it's like, I can't believe this is where it started. And I feel like the ups and downs now are memories, whether it was good or bad, or how tired I was, or I was stressed out, like all of these things, those parts don't matter, the little day-to-day things. But looking back, I was like, this is a lot of stuff. There's 3 new people. There's a company. There's like journeys we went on and trips we took. And I was like, if I stopped worrying so much about what happened today and looked at what's coming, that's like, just enjoy where it's at and don't stress out about the small things.
Yeah, listen, I hope that current you who just said that will remember that.
Yes, me too.
So that the you 8 years from now can be like, oh yeah, remember that conversation? Yes, I'm still living that. So
I'll bookmark this, and every like other day watch this part.
this little part, be like,
Note to self.
all right, where can we find you? What's coming up for you that we can celebrate you in? Just what's going on?
So you can find me, everything is Sarah Marie Running Co. So Instagram, our website, sarahmarie.run. Actually, at anything Sarah Marie Design Studio still links back to it. We have, and coming up, if this comes out in December, check out the holiday stuff. By the time it's up, we should have a whole new stuff. We're doing limited edition drops, new designs for the holiday season. And then 2024, I'm hoping to, I don't know if I'll do expos yet because it's more work, but I'm hoping to go to some races, like, be out and about again, because I am itching. I'd love to do a half marathon, get into racing again a little bit. Like, doing things is my goal for 2024. It's been a lot. So find me wherever I'm at. I'll put it up follow me on Instagram, and I'll put up where I'm going next.
I would say just follow on Instagram.
Instagram's the jam.
All right. Last question is just any final words for us?
I don't know. I feel like I rambled a lot. Just thank you. Anyone who's like purchased from me, followed me, written me a letter, thank you. I am doing this because it started because people wanted things from me, and I started it, and I've grown it into this because of you guys. And I just want to say thank you, because I am loving it, and I hope that you guys continue to support me. And it's all here because people are wanting to buy my stuff. And honestly, thank you is my final words.
Yeah. Listen, you make, and I keep like touching it. I'm like, every time I touch this, it's like I'm touching you. I'm like, yes, because you remind us that we celebrate off the run as well. Right. And that there's so much more to the runner identity than physically running. And that's what your apparel does. It connects us all together. I mean, imagine, I don't know how many of these London shirts you sold, right? And I'm sure you can go back and you can find it. But right there, you've connected people. I'm connected to every single person that has bought this shirt. Every single person, whether I know them or not, I'm connected to them. And it's all because you had an idea and you put it out there.
And it's so fun when you see people in the wild, like my husband has saw someone on the sidewalk once and went up and took a picture and was like, my wife made your shirt. And it's crazy to me that that this, and again too, I appreciate you saying that because it's, why I started this. And it means so much to me that people are still out there, buying my stuff and wearing the silly things I come up with. And it just means the world to me.
Yeah, well, you know what? Keep creating, but as we talked about today, keep creating, but definitely make sure that you're resting. Take your time to do your runs to clear your mind.
Yes.
And I just want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was so great talking
Thank
to
you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.